I am just a shh. Before you get ready to let that slip out of your mouth, I am just a phlebotomist. Check out today's episode. You are going to be amazed when you hear all the things that a phlebotomist can be. Have you ever dreamed of owning your own mobile phlebotomy program or your own phlebotomy school? Thought about being a business owner and using your phlebotomy expertise? Then you need to check out today's episode where you will get to hear firsthand from an entrepreneur, phlebotomist, mobile phlebotomy instructor, as she tells us about her adventures from the laboratory to being out in the community, driving state to state in her own mobile program.
Welcome to the eLABorate Topics podcast, where we focus on lab-specific strategies for medical laboratory professionals. We're proud to be the healthcare detectives that work behind the scenes to get the results needed to influence medical decisions. Let's grow together and jump right into the lab.
Welcome to eLABorate Topics. I am your host and leadership mentor for this episode, Tywana Wilson. If this is your first time tuning in, you are in for a treat. Each week we have new leaders that come into our laboratory that gives us strategies that we can use inside and outside of the laboratory, giving you those personal development, leadership, and technical tips that you can use to be successful in your laboratory career. And today's episode is no different. We have an awesome leader in the laboratory space. I'm super excited to have her here with us today. Her name is Lisa Wylie. I am going to bring a little bit of information about her, read a brief bio, and then she's really going to come in because really what I'm going to say is not going to do justice to what she does or who she is. So Lisa Wylie is a phlebotomist specialist that has been in the healthcare field for over 2 decades with a ton of experience. She's a phlebotomy coach, instructor, mentor, as well as a published author. And if you haven't read any of her books, they are catered for the laboratory industry. They're very cool for your kids. You need to definitely look at those. She owns and operates a patient service center and a mobile phlebotomy program. So this is awesome. As we talk about phlebotomists and what they can do, we all know that they are critical in their role as being on the healthcare team. But I'm telling you, Lisa is going to give us some more information about how phlebotomists are really awesome in what they do. So Lisa, hello, how are you?
I am fine, and good morning, listeners. How's everyone out there?
So we are super excited to have you here. I read a little bit about you, but I would like for you to tell the listeners in your own words a little bit about your laboratory journey and how did you get to where you are being an entrepreneur, owning your own mobile phlebotomy company.
Well, actually, guys, I started off in the lab, phlebotomy. Took a phlebotomy course actually at one of the schools that offered the first phlebotomy training aside from the medical lab technician program. So once I completed that, I went on to become a medical assistant, graduated with my degree as an MA. But I tend to like the phlebotomy aspect of it, so I stayed more on the clinical side, worked in numerous hospitals in and out, always did mobile as well, traveling. And I kind of liked that. I liked the mobile travel, the freedom of traveling, I should say, and getting out the hospital scene. So I just remember taking my MA course, graduated with Dean's List, and I just remember my instructor telling me, hey, you're able to teach this, and that was years ago. So, and that's always stuck with me. So when I first started out in 2006, I designed and opened my first phlebotomy training facility. So that was my first phlebotomy venture there, starting my own training school, because I wanted people to learn the correct way phlebotomy, because our work is looked down upon. People think, oh, you're just a phlebotomist or you're just that, but we play a huge role in the healthcare system as well as the laboratory, the other staff or professionals as well. We're a big part of the healthcare system, and I would like to bring awareness to that.
Awesome. I think what you said is critical. You're right. We do play a huge part, and we count on our phlebotomists to be able to get us a viable sample that we can use so that we can get accurate results. For those that are friends of the laboratory that may not know exactly what a phlebotomist is or what a phlebotomist does, can you talk a little bit about what a phlebotomist is, and is there any special training or any certifications that's required?
Yes, a phlebotomist is the person that actually goes in, look for a vein. We don't have the vein finders, so we have to be very proficient when it comes to filling or palpating a vein. There is special training. There are some in-house training where you can learn on the job, or you can go through a training course. My course, for example, is 9 weeks in length, and then they do a 3-week extern. Just landed a contract with LabCorp, who will be taking our students in and actually waiving the 1-year experience. So I make sure, or I always teach my students, it's not about the quantity of samples you can collect. It's about the quality. Because if you can collect 50 samples and if none of them are good, you haven't helped at all. So I'm very specific. I do follow CLSI standards when it comes to collection, because that's very important. A patient diagnosis and treatment is actually in our hands. So basically, life is in our hands. We want to make sure that we're doing everything correctly, and I take pride in what I do, and I pass that on. That was a reason for me stepping out to say, and also not only just sit back and say, okay, you're doing it wrong, but how can I help? How can I teach them the correct way to do it? Because if you're not learning the correct way, then, of course, it's going to keep trickling down. So that was a reason for me standing up saying, hey, you know what, this is important. What we do is very important. We may get passed over and looked over, but what we're doing is very critical when it comes to treating a patient. So like I said, we're the ones that it starts with us. The patient care starts with us. Because you can go in there and tell a doctor all the symptoms you have, but they can't properly diagnose you until you've had blood drawn, until the techs run that test, and then relay that information back to your doctor.
Absolutely. You are right. You all are an essential part of the process. What about any certifications? Are any certifications required, or is that like an added bonus if somebody does get a certification?
That is kind of an added bonus. Sometimes most of the hospitals would prefer that you have your certification. And it basically just shows that, hey, you've been through the proper training, and then not only that, that you inquired and you know the information to go in to pass that certification, because it's not a fly-by-night test. There's only 11 certification agencies, and they take that very seriously. Now, I do certify my students. I do put that within the program. That way they have everything and they're well-equipped when they go out there. Because if you don't receive your certification after your training, you have to wait 6 months, and then you have to get it documented from your employer that you've been employed a consecutive 6 months before you're allowed to go sit for that exam.
Got it. Is there a premier certification, or can you talk to us a little bit about some of the certification agencies that people would go through?
Well, you can go through ASCP, which is one of the bigger ones. You can go through NHA, National Health Career Association, which is one that I use, AMT, NCCT, NPS. So there's quite a few. There's 11. That you can certify to, but you also, too, want to make sure when you're doing your certification that you look at the different agencies, because what tends to happen now, or what is happening now, a lot of people are creating this agency and kind of targeting phlebotomists with these fly-by-night certifications or this course saying, hey, you can be an instructor, when some of those agencies are not accredited and are not legit.
Got it. And so is there something, say, for instance, there's a listener that's listening to our interview today and they know that they want to get on the track of being a phlebotomist, like what should they look for these agencies to make sure that they're not coming across one of these that are a fly-by-night type of opportunity?
What I would look for, you don't want, first of all, a course that's promising you they're going to pay you for how many students that you can bring in and get the certification. That right there is a red flag, because no national agency is going to pay you to bring in phlebs to their agency. That's not right. Another thing, when you're talking about phlebotomy courses, a lot of people like to get into phlebotomy, but go about it the right way. Don't look at the fast-track way of, okay, I want to hurry up, because at the same time, you are dealing with critical information for a patient to be diagnosed and treated. And not only that, you can do a lot of damage to a patient if you don't learn the correct way of collecting the sample. So you don't want to be in no fly-by-night classes. I recommend if you're going to take a phlebotomy course, make sure that you have information and research the course that you are going to take. Talk to some former students to see how they like the class, look at the job placement, and talk around to the different hospitals, too, that you're interested in. Do they have credibility amongst these healthcare providers to know that, okay, once I graduate, I'm going to be able to go and get a job at this particular facility?
Those are great. And then those are really great questions. You're right. It's all about the questions that you ask, and I love that, interviewing some of these facilities that you will be interested in working in before you even embark on that training. I thought that was awesome. So what skills and strengths do you feel are important to be successful as a phlebotomist? Because I'll tell you, early in my career and part of the training to be a medical laboratory scientist or medical laboratory technician, you do have a brief stint in phlebotomy. And for me, I love working with people. I love the people, but I could never get my confidence up. And I think because when I did my clinicals, I was inside of a VA. It was like there was all difficult draws. I would go upstairs in the morning for the AM draw. And because I didn't get my confidence up, I was like, okay, I don't want a role in which I have to do phlebotomy. So there are skills and strengths that come with being a phlebotomist, especially being a good one. And so what skills and strengths do you feel are important to be successful?
I'm going to touch on that. I'm glad you said that, because that's what ended up happening. A lot of people are like, that is not for me. I'm not going to do phlebotomy. I think the skill that's important, especially starting off new. What I tell the students, because I have them in class, so I feel like in class what's very important, number one, we do steps. I'm going to just say steps when it comes to phlebotomy. They learn it early on in class versus me waiting to the end of class. So that's number one. And they have a practice take-home kit that they're constantly drawing and drawing and drawing. We have the other arm, so when they come in, they can draw and get specimen. But I think it's most important when they're in class, they kind of get over that fear once they see the blood sample finally go into the tube. Now, the next part of going out into your extern to build that confidence up, I always tell them you're going to be paired with somebody. Don't shy away from the draw once you get comfortable with the person that's showing you around. Sometimes challenge yourself to step up and say, let me do that. Not only that, if your facility is safe for if your facility doesn't draw babies, but the phlebs don't draw babies, but always ask the nurses, you always can talk to your coworkers and ask your colleagues, hey, can I just come up and watch you? I know we don't do it, but let me just watch the technique. Mm-hmm. So I always tell people that'll build you up too, especially when you're training with someone. You can say, okay, that's a difficult draw, let me feel it, or let me try, especially since I have you here with me. And I think that's a good way to build yourself up. I always tell people don't shy away from it. Don't say, okay, I don't want to face it. Okay, no, I don't want to deal with that, because you never know when you're going to be put in a position and you may have to do it. And why not learn it earlier on so that way you're building that up? And it's never too late to always say, you know what, I need some extra training, or I don't feel comfortable. If you're not comfortable, don't go for it. But at the same time, put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Don't limit yourself on what you can learn.
Absolutely. I think that's critical. I really like that you said, challenge yourself and even watch, even if it is the typical draw that you wouldn't draw babies or drawn from a foot or, any kind of complex drawing, even being able to be in the room to see how it's done. Again, I went and I had the confidence going into it in the class. Everybody's normal, blood is flowing, veins is great.
Mm-hmm.
But once I went into and going on the floor, really sickly patients, their veins rolling, I was like, oh no, to be better than others. Some days they would say, yeah, you the best. You the best I ever had. And that was awesome. And then other times they'd be like, you got one more stick. You got one more time.
And that happens, I think, too, with, like you said, that confidence, getting familiar with the different techniques. I know now they've kind of stopped a lot of the different techniques. There's 3 methods in drawing. I do still teach all 3 of those methods. And I tell people that your index finger is your best friend because that's what you're going to be palpating. And you always want to be making sure you're feeling. Close your eyes and feel for that bouncy feel. Don't be so quick to go for something surface. I mean, if they have large veins, then, of course, don't go feeling around. I'm not saying that. But don't be so quick to, if you see something, and say, oh, okay, I'm going to draw from that. Make sure you're comfortable with your techniques as well. Because if you get that down pack and you're able to, I always tell you should be assessing the person before you come in there. And what I mean by assessing, you should know to be able to read their body language, if they're comfortable with having blood drawn or if they're not. If this is a patient that you need to be talking through the process, but don't ever go into a patient's room and feel like they're obligated to just let you just draw blood from them. No, put yourself in their shoes, and how would you want a person to approach you? And take caution when they're dealing or getting some specimen from you. So that way, if you do that, that can build your confidence as well. Put yourself in that patient's position.
Absolutely. So that's huge, having that strength and skill of discernment, of being able to evaluate the room, being able to communicate effectively are all critical strengths and skills that are going to be helpful for the phlebotomist. So when people think of phlebotomists, they sometimes think the ceiling is limited, and they may be limited, especially if they're working in a hospital. Can you talk to the listeners about different opportunities of phlebotomists and ways they can go about expanding their network?
No, you're not just limited to the hospital. You can go work for insurance companies and do their pyramid exams as long as you have that phlebotomy skill. You can go and do insurance exams, and you can set your own schedule, and that tends to be mobile. You can go work in a patient service center, and some of them will move you over to, and you won't be a tech, but you're somewhat as a lab assistant where you can do some of the clear wave testing that they allow you to do. So you can draw it, process it, and then test certain tests. So you can go to a variety of places. Fitness centers hire phlebotomists, and cosmetic surgeons, they hire phlebotomists in, so you're not limited. You're only limited when you're limited yourself in learning. That's why I say learn as much as you can when it comes to phlebotomy. You can be in a position to become a phlebotomy supervisor, a phlebotomy trainer, sit on different boards. I know one of my staff members, she's actually a rep for the phlebotomist. So within her hospital. So you're not limited to just, being in a hospital setting and doing this, and this is the only skill I have. Some phlebotomists, as you see, it's really growing, are opening their own mobile companies. So it's so many different paths that you can do when it comes to phlebotomy, long as you don't limit yourself.
That's great information. Very great. And then I'm going to piggyback off of that. What if we have a lab professional, a phlebotomist who's on the verge of giving up and they feel like maybe they've hit their ceiling, they're tired of going into the hospital at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning to do the AM draws, and they're like, I don't know where else I can go or do. What kind of advice, and I know you've talked about some of the different areas that they could work in, but if you were talking to, somebody that's in it, like what kind of advice would you give them to help them so that they don't give up and know that their ceiling is unlimited?
The advice I would give you, first of all, is don't give up. Find what you were good at, even if it's not phlebotomy, and if it was phlebotomy. What did you enjoy most, or what brings you to work every single day for the years or the time that you've been there, that you loved it at one point? Get back to that. Get back to feeling what made you become a phlebotomist and what made you say, okay, this is where I want to be. I love what I do. I don't want to go any further, but this is what I want to do. Once you get back to that feeling, I think you can excel versus giving up. And also think about maybe opening and operating your own. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be big. But think about, maybe, am I a person that feel like I will be more successful if I open my own and did my own thing? I think that will help you greatly in deciding that, versus just saying, you know what, I'm going to just walk away, because you have a lot to contribute to phlebotomy versus just walking away from it. Whether you want to educate, it doesn't have to be opening your own mobile. Maybe you want to teach the course. Maybe now you're at a way where it's like, okay, I have enough skills to pass on to somebody to learn the correct way. So think about even going to work and teach at a school. Even if you don't want to open your own, think about sitting at a facility saying, okay, I can help you navigate through the phlebotomy process. I did it for this many years. I feel like I have a lot of information to contribute. So it doesn't have to be about opening your own, but get back to what brought you to that point where, okay, this is what I want to do and this is what I love doing, because you do get burned out. You're not appreciated. You're understaffed. So it does burn you out. It does. A lot of people are turning away from it because it's like, why are we here? Nobody appreciates us. Nobody acknowledges us. They think we're at the bottom of the healthcare barrel. So you do get burned out and you do feel a lot discouraged. But like I said, bring that remembrance back to what made you do it in the first place.
Absolutely. I think that's critical for whether you're a phlebotomist or a medical lab professional, a technologist, scientist, because you can get burnt out. And you're right, you do have to go back to why did you get into it in the first place. And I know you talked about, having your own, and that's a whole different mindset for people of going from an employer to even thinking about how could I start my own. So what kind of steps would you tell people who are truly enjoying this conversation we're having? They are very interested in the information that you're giving. They're like, wow, she started her own business. She's an instructor. Like, how could somebody even get started into doing their own thing?
Well, I think self-evaluation. Evaluate yourself and see where you see yourself at. Because like I'm saying, even if you look at it or you're listening to me and you decide, hey, you know what, I can teach, but I don't want to teach my own. I don't want to write the curriculum. I don't want to do that. Well, go down to some of the colleges. They're looking for people to educate. Ask around in your hospital. Sometimes the hospitals are looking for someone to educate their phlebotomists too in-house versus just having someone and they're just going through fly-by-night and passing through. So if you don't think of it as an aspect of owning your own, there's always a position available. And sometimes you can go work before you decide if you want to venture off onto your own. Now, when it comes, I do recommend having experience with it. I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but I'd rather prefer you to have experience or be experienced with a whole bunch of different stuff, because then your students can relate to you. Your students can relate to you, and not only that, if you're going out on your own, the patient can relate to you. And you're confident, because if you look at it from a mobile phlebotomy aspect, there's no one else to go back out there and draw the patient if you miss the patient. So that's why I'm saying make sure you have that experience and that confidence. Don't just jump in it, but do it as a self-evaluation. and say, okay, can I see myself, or do I see myself owning my own, or would I like to contribute in a way where I'm working for someone, but I'm still contributing that information?
Awesome. Lisa, you've been able to do a lot in your career, and you've even written 6 books educating young readers about blood collection and blood donation, COVID, and laboratory heroes, and it's pretty exciting. I mean, you've developed the characters and everything. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about your books and your source of inspiration for writing them?
Yes, the books are designed. I had a blood drop, and I just remember taking my kids to the doctor always, and even to this day, they're adults now. They always like, Mom, I fear it, I want you to draw my blood. That's what I got a lot from a lot of family members. Hey, we're going to come in. I want you to draw blood, So, and then when I looked around, I seen, once again, my biggest thing, I love what I do. I love the lab. I love the lab professionals, and I love phlebotomy. So with that, I looked around and I've seen, okay, there's books that talk about going to the doctor, going to the nurse, but there's nothing specifically telling kids about going to the laboratory, having blood drawn. When people think of lab, everybody shy away from us. It's like, oh my goodness, they're going to be drawing my blood. I hate it, Or kids, they can scream before they even get down there. It's like a needle. But what I've learned over my years in drawing, if you can talk to the child and even sometimes the parent and explain to them the process of what's going on, then people are more amped to let you to draw their blood. Now I have an 8-year-old child, and I had to take him down for blood drawing. He loves the Avengers, so he loves the superhero characters. So I would have to pretend like, hey, you're going to be a superhero once you get your blood drawn. This is that. So that prompted me to say, okay, why don't I take something that they're terrified of? Because who doesn't go crazy at the sight of blood? So why don't I take something that a lot of people fear and make it a superhero and have that character actually explaining to them what is going on? And not only that, he's explaining to a child what is going on, something a child can relate to. So that was an aspiration or inspiration for me writing my books and, once again, trying to bring awareness to the lab. What is going on in the laboratory? So I tried to go from all angles, whether they having blood collected. I deal with a lot of autistic kids, so I did make one particular where they can kind of follow along with the steps as it explains it to them. So the other one was the blood cell Avenger. That one actually explains to them the different components of blood, but not only that, how the body heals itself once it gets an owie. So it's different things they can relate to.
Awesome.
Then we had this COVID going on.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
So we had COVID happening. So and that basically that book is designed to tell children what is happening around them. Once again, we use Timmy to explain what is going on and what's happening to the kids, what's happening with our environment. There's a germ out here. And what do we know about germs? So that book is kind of explains that one. Then we have the blood donation book. And basically, Timmy is explaining to Super Kid why it's important for people to donate. So that's when I look at that from that different aspect. So that's what I did. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I love your creativity and your passion in bringing awareness to the lab, bringing awareness to blood collection, and how you've been able to bring our children into the interest. So we always talk about lab advocacy and what can we do in our own space. And I think what you're doing is awesome in your space of being able to bring awareness to what we do as laboratory heroes. So kudos to you. That's exciting.
Thank you. Oh, and that's the other one, the laboratory hero. So that book basically explains what each person in the lab does. So
nice. So where can people find these books and support your initiatives with that? Where can they get the books, copy of the books?
The books are all available on Amazon. So if you type in Timmy and Super Kid, you'll get the whole list of the books. I just recently launched where you can get the plushies, so you can order them as a comfort, or if you have it in lab, I have them prepackaged wrap where you don't have to take it out the plastic because of the COVID and everything. So we have the plushies now available, and those are directly, you will have to order through me. So we have Timmy and Super Kid plushies so the kids can take along, or just to have in a lab. Not so much kids. Sometimes adults like to see that too. So then they have their superhero Timmy they can hold on to, or that comforts them with having. But the books are all on Amazon. And I have the plushies in person. Also, for those you asked me earlier about thinking about if they come to their end, I have a book called The Journey, and it tells you how to open your own how to open your own phlebotomy training program, the different steps with that. Soon will be an e-book on how to open or evaluate yourself or opening your own mobile phlebotomy company. So that will be coming soon, but the rest of the books are right now on Amazon.
Awesome. And I love that you said that, and that's one of the reasons for those who maybe have never heard this podcast before, and that's one of the reasons why myself, along with my co-host, Stephanie Whitehead and Lona Small, why we brought this podcast together to bring exposure to individuals such as yourself, Lisa, who are doing awesome things in laboratory medicine that are or could be unsung heroes to the profession as a whole, but are out here that's advocating for the industry. And so it's just an honor to have you on the show today to talk about some of the creative things that you're doing and, just bringing awareness to the industry. So with that, you are on social media, you are utilizing social media to promote the profession. And listeners, if you are not following Lisa and her group and her initiative, you need to. She has all kind of funny videos, all kind of inspirational videos about drawing blood, and you see her in her trailer, her mobile van, and she's out here doing collections. And she actually has a very large group that's on Facebook that's dedicated to, it's a huge phlebotomist group with over 2,000 members. So and I talked a little bit about, how you use social media to bring awareness to the profession, but just talk a little bit about why you do some of the things on social media that you do, meaning your videos, bringing awareness, having your group dedicated to phlebotomists and phlebotomist entrepreneurs.
Well, that book was designed because I get bombarded with a lot of emails and phone calls. So I had bought the group together. There's quite a few, but I had bought this group together because a lot of people have different questions. One of the huge questions, and it talks back to what you were saying, some people giving up, to keep them motivated, to keep people, the phlebotomists, motivated, and to give them a space to share things. Sometimes we can't share things with the others, and we all may be feeling the same way. So that was a reason for the group to get that out there, have a shared space where the phlebs can talk, give tips or share tips with each other, share job leads with each other, because a lot of people or new people are graduating. They're always looking for jobs. I try to give resume tips on how to write your resume and what the employer may be looking for. Sometimes I have people where I have a day where I tell them, hey, you can email me your resume. We'll go over it, and then we'll write it together. So sometimes in my free time, I do that for people because I want people to stay in a profession. I love what I do. I love phlebotomy. I love people lighting up when I'm talking about phlebotomy. I just love it. So, and I wouldn't change it for anything. So that's what the group was created. And I kind of put / the preneur because then I get those too that saying, hey, I want to join because I have a few questions. I started my own business, and I have a few questions for you. And that way I can answer their question, and it's not just me and that person seeing it, but there's a variety of people seeing it. If they can't reach me, they're still able to go back in a group and get that question answered if that was something they were looking for. So that was the purpose of me creating that space right there for the flats.
Awesome. So as you hear, listeners, you hear how Lisa went and she felt the need. There was a need, and she was able to fill it. So I know a lot of time we get listeners that ask, like, what can I do in my space? What can I do to make a difference? And Lisa's a prime example. You start with where you are. You start with your passion to serve. And whether that's being a phlebotomist or taking those skills to move into entrepreneurship, whether that's your abilities as a technologist, as a scientist, whether that's your abilities as a pathologist, or any other member of the laboratory team, you can start making an impact where you are. There may be a group that you need to start that need your expertise. And so, Lisa, I thought that was awesome because your group is vibrant. I am a member of your group, so thank you for letting me join. And you all are vibrant. You could tell that the members are engaged and getting information. They're sharing. You know, this is what I've come across. I'm getting ready to launch my school. Here are things that I'm doing as a phlebotomist, and it's just awesome. And they have a great leader. You could tell in the passion that you have in your voice that you really enjoy what you do.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me on, too.
I appreciate you being on, and I appreciate being able to share your story and what you're doing, the good work that you're doing with the audience. And I know that it probably wasn't an easy journey. So can you share with the listeners a little bit about what has success taught you as you went on and have a successful career that spanned 2 decades?
What it has taught me is to be humble. Always be humble and always be willing to learn. You can never say that you know everything. So always be open to learning, and not only that, learning new things in what you're doing. So that's what I feel success has taught me. And then building friendships, building a variety of friendships, not afraid to give information as well as receive information. So that's what my success has taught me. And like I said, building these friendships. So you reached out to me, so it must have been something that you've seen just by looking to have that friendly saying, okay, she has a good vibe. So I'm going to reach out to her and talk. So that's what I've learned with my success is, like I said, being humble and always willing to learn something new.
Awesome. Being humble and open are huge, and learning something new is critical because we should always be learning and growing. And as I always say, growth is intentional. You don't just wake up and be like, "Whoo, I grew." I mean, unless you are a kid, and yeah, you may be growing in your sleep, but as an adult, growth is intentional. So what are some of the things that you do for your own professional and personal growth?
Well, do a lot of reading. So I do a lot of reading, and I'm constantly reading over the same thing. Another thing I do, especially since the phlebotomy world, I read a lot of the phlebotomy books that are being brought out just to determine which ones is right for the class. So I do a lot of phlebotomy reading, and I try to stay up to date on everything that's going on in the field and getting to know majority of everyone that is in my space as well. I try hard to do that, but reading is my number one in learning.
Got it. Are there any conferences or anything that people can go to and continue to learn that way as well?
I don't see, and I've been looking tirelessly, I don't see a lot of conferences being put together, at least just for the phlebotomy aspect of it. I don't see a lot of conferences with that. And, yes, people are probably asking me why I don't put together, right, listeners? But that'll be something I'll do later on when time allows it. But I don't, and I'm glad you asked that question because that would be something I would love to see. I would love to see conferences put together for a phlebotomist, and believe me, I've been in a talk with that. I've had a lot of people reach out for that.
Well, put it into the atmosphere. You never know. Maybe that's something we should talk about offline and make it happen. Maybe that's something we can speak into 2022. Who knows?
Exactly. Yes, I would love to do that.
Awesome. So as we get ready to wrap up here with our interview here shortly, what's an unknown fact that people might not know about you that you would like to share? I always like to, continue to bridge that connection with our guests and the listeners. So, people know that you are an entrepreneur. They know that you are a phlebotomist by background. They know what they might see on social media, but what's one thing that they may not know about you that would be interesting?
Well, actually, I thought I would be an attorney, so that's one thing. But I've been in healthcare and exceeded. That's something I didn't know about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I love music. I was a huge, huge Prince fan. So that would be the reason, actually, for me moving to Minnesota. So now you guys have an insight. I was a huge Prince fan. So, and then, like I said, I love music. I love all kinds of music. I think it's soothing to the soul. So awesome. Even when I'm working, I'm in here and I have a little music playing. So I love that. And I am a people's person. And a reason being probably I'm the oldest of 13. No, my mom had no twins, so I'm the oldest of 13 siblings. And I am very, very free-hearted. I'm always giving, and it's probably because I'm the oldest of 13. So I always feel like I have to take care of someone or look out for someone.
And that probably was great for you in your role as a phlebotomist and feeling like you have to look out, because that's one of the things that really phlebotomists, they do. I mean, they look out, for the patient, but then they make sure that they have a viable specimen for the technologist team to be able to work with. So having that giving heart and spirit. So that's probably another reason why you really enjoy what you do and were very successful in your role as well. So how can the listeners get connected with you, stay connected with you, and follow you on your journey as you were out? Like I said, your videos just crack me up, and it's like, we are awesome. So I love to see them and see you in your mobile van, and it's awesome to watch. So how can the other listeners get the same experience that I'm getting?
Okay. Well, we are on Facebook, so you can join the Facebook group. It's the Phlebotomist/Phlebpreneur. Or I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter as Lab Team Assistants. So if you want to stay connected, you can follow me on any one of those sites. And you want to follow me because we'll be giving away some books here. If you're working with children, we would like for you to be working with children. So we can give you some good books to keep in the laboratory. And then some of the winners will get the Timmy and Plushie. Timmy or Super Kid plushie. So make sure you're in those phlebotomy groups or following me on Instagram at Lab Team Assistants because we're going to be doing those giveaways soon.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, this was awesome. I really enjoyed speaking with you today and learning more about you and your journey inside and outside of the laboratory, being able to go from the hospital to being an entrepreneur to being able to travel the country, impacting the world, one plushie, one book at a time. So this has been awesome. So thank you so much for sharing with the listeners today, and I look forward to connecting with you because we're going to talk about that phlebotomist conference, integrating it into something. We're going to talk about it.
Yes. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice, like you said, to bring that awareness. And not only that, the techs, I always wonder with the medical lab technologists or scientists, like, where are they at? Where are they speaking at? So it's nice to be able to connect with you all as well. It is so nice, and so nice to start bringing or getting that momentum for the laboratory people to be able to come into a space and talk and then share their information on what they're doing, because there's so many wonderful people out here doing so many fascinating things.
You are absolutely right. And together, we are better. So we just have to keep impacting our space, one laboratorian, one test, one hospital at a time.
Exactly. And don't forget the one stick at a time.
You are absolutely right. One stick at a time. So we'll close out with that. One stick, one team, one vision, one goal of improvement and impacting the laboratory and bringing exposure to what we do.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you, listener audience, for tuning in to this week's episode of eLABorate Topics with my awesome guest, Lisa Wylie, who is taking phlebotomy to the streets. She is bringing phlebotomy and the information to a team near you, with a book near you, impacting the world one stick at a time. So please tune in week after week to hear another amazing episode. Follow us at directimpactbroadcasting.com. If you're interested in being a guest, please reach out. You can find a contact form at directimpactbroadcasting.com. Reach out to myself or my co-host, Stephanie Whitehead and Lona Small. And until next time, have an amazing week.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of eLABorate Topics, where your hosts discussed relevant strategies for laboratory professionals. Please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and listen to us on directimpactbroadcasting.com. Stay tuned for another episode with information you can use to excel in your laboratory